Hello everybody, it's a video. I've been making a Godot game in Godot. I've been learning lots about coding, and I've been getting a lot of help. So I thought I would make a video going over what I've made so far, and explaining the code so that I can prove, at least to myself, that I understand how it all functions. Because if after all of this I don't know what the hell's going on, I'll never be able to fix bugs or make something, iterate on it. I think I get it. So I'm gonna go through it. First, let's run the thing so you can see what exists. Let's run it. Let's full screen that, and I've got to turn my controller on. Here's a pill, and it's got a camera movement. The camera, the pitch has a preferred angle. It goes towards that. You can turn around. We got like we got a lot of placeholder things. This is not like a visually stunning thing, but I did start kind of with a day-night cycle. So we got like a light bulb over there. He's flying up, and he's got a thing attached to him. So that's going to go in a 360 arc around the entire world, and that's great. We can move. You can see I've... Shut up! So we can move around. I've got like a little square thing to show which direction I'm pointing, and it's nice smooth movement. It's no jumping. There's not jumping designed in this game. It's not that kind of a game. It's not really, I don't know if you'd call it a game, but I just wanted to make something. And we got an NPC. They got a little thingy comes up over their head. And I press the button, and they're talking. We've got a camera angle. We've got the NPC rotating towards looking at me looking towards the NPC. We've got to pressing the button to go through the text, and then it finishes, and then we're back to the normal, and we go over, let's go for a different angle. Let's go from this angle here, and let's turn around. And then we both, and it's a different camera angle. And they got a different thing to say, and let's see, who's this? All placeholders, huh? Here, yep. Let's do a few more little talking. So that's the gist. The game, as I want it to be, is basically just a diorama. I've described it as. I don't know if that's what you would call this, but just sort of like, or a terrarium. Like it's an aquarium. It's an aquarium for OCs, original characters that I would plop in here, and then I would walk around as, I don't know, some other character, maybe a 3D model of me, or I don't know, who knows. And then I would go over and press the button to speak to all of my OCs, and I would just give them a bunch of dialogue, a bunch of different things to say. Oh, and also, I've got a first-person camera. You can still walk while doing it. So there's the sun. And you can talk to people while in first person. And you can talk back, and yeah. And you can fall off the edge of the world because it has gravity. Okay, so that's the game as it is playable right now. So the idea is I would make a model in Blender, give it animations in Blender, and then import it into this, and then just set up like play animation talking when talking. So let's go over the code so I can prove to myself and to you all watching that I know what I'm doing. So let's look at the main first. This is the main. We've got nodes. GDScript and Godot is made to be a little easier to comprehend, but certain things are just hard no matter what. But it's the syntax is very loose compared to like C++ or whatever. So it deals with like, if you've got a colon here, it has to be a tab over underneath it for it to be related. Otherwise, they're not related. And then it's like, huh? What do you mean? So on ready, when the thing is loaded, daytime is true, which is a bool I made. I made that bool. Change day-night speed. which is a function, which is this function, to day-night speed, which is an exported variable, which I set as 1, and I can change the speed in, so the main here, the inspector, anything I export a variable, they call them variants, but I can't help but say variable because that just it's what other things have done. Variable, variant, day-night speed equals not integer, it's a float because it's got a 0.0, and then that goes over here in the inspector for when I click on main, because that's the node it's talking about. That's the script icon saying that the script here is different from that script. This is the script, it's main.gd. If I click on ground, it's got its own inspector with its own set of things that you can change. And a node 3D is a default node. It's got these things, it's got transform abilities, visibility stuff, and then process things. But I made an export, and that's 0.02, so that's the speed of day-night. I can change that by just doing this, saving it. And I think, oh wait. Maybe I just need to change into something else. Yeah, there we go. Sometimes it just takes a bit to update. So now the day-night speed is set at 1. This is how I was editing it, and it changes color. Then there's the moon. I haven't made a moon thing yet, but the moon also casts a shadow as it goes over. It's just less bright, and then the bright sunlight comes back, and it changes color, and it's all very lovely and nice. So there's that. So I changed that back to 0.02 because that was alright for now. Alright, and current time start. So current time is, the $sign is referencing a thing in the same tree, I think. So current time is this timer here. This timer has a timer of 10 seconds, and it starts the timer when the this node is ready or is loaded in. And the timer is 10 seconds, and I change the speed of it with the change day-night speed. So sunlight animation player, we've got the animation players for the moonlight, the sunlight, and the world environment. Could have done this, maybe consolidating all these animation players into one animation player, but I didn't know how to do it, so that's just how it is. So we got the moonlight. If we go to 3D view, where's the moonlight? I guess the moonlight is just a thing here, and the animation player is the thing that, if I go to animation, yeah, so we got the light color, the rotation, and the light energy keyframes. And so we click on that. So the rotation is 0, and then it goes to -90, and then -180, it's gone all the way around. The moonlight is a bit different from the sunlight, which just has a 360 rotation. So if I go to the animation play for that, sun cycle, goes all the way around, changes color with the light color thing. Light energy, I subtly change it. I make it get less powerful near the end, and less powerful at the beginning. You know, that's pretty good. So what I do with the scripts is I set the speed scale of each of these animations, because they're in the same time frame. They're all 10 seconds, or 20 seconds, because the timer is, for a day, is like 10 seconds, so the whole thing is 20 seconds long, so it loops. I set the speed scale to speed, and that is a float. I think speed is like, it's not a variable I have to create up here, it's just a thing in Godot. Many things are things in Godot. So speed scale, if you control click on a thing, it will show you the manual documentation of what that is, which is very handy. So speed scale, speed scaling ratio, Yeah, so that's for animation stuff. How do I get back to where? Oh yeah. Yeah, so change day, night speed, speed, float. So I guess I'm making a variable, a float, a speed afloat in this function, and then I'm setting these speed scales to the speed and the wait time of the thing. Wait time of the, it's the value of the old thing. The old timer value is 10 divided by speed, so that I had a thing, actually I still do, if daytime is true, on current time timeout, so when the timer is over, if the daytime, which is a bool, is true, then turn it to false, print nighttime, current time start. So every time a day passes, the timer restarts, and when it finishes, we play this again. So if it's now, we made it false, so the next time it comes around, if daytime is true, well it's not, else, otherwise, make it true, print daytime, time start. So now if I wanted to do something that only happens during the day or night, I have something to check whether it's the day or night because of this bool here, and that's just grand. So this is the main, and it seems it's only doing that. It's only doing the day-night cycle. So that's all very nice. So let's have a look at the 3D view. We got the main, we got inside the main, we got the camera pivot and the camera follower. We'll go over that in a minute. We got the ground, collision shape, the collision hitbox, the mesh instance, which is the visuals, and I've given it the default Godot icon as the texture, just so I can see what it looks like. Sunlight, sprite 3D. This is the part that I was trying to figure out, and then I sort of thought, I'll leave it. I'll figure this out at some point, but I want to have a PNG or some like sprite of a sun image that I could draw and then import in, and then it would go up. This, if I play the game, if you move around, you can tell that this is actually quite close, the sun wouldn't move across quite so much. So I need to try and find a way to make it look as though it's like infinitely far away, but still rotating around the same point at the same speed. So that's a thing to figure out. But it works for now. Then there's the player, that's me. Then we got NPCs. These are instantiated versions of the NPC node. So you make an NPC node, and then you can right-click instantiate child scene, which makes an instance of it, which is unique. So they inherit everything from the NPC. If I update something about the NPC, these will all change. But on top of that, they've got their own name and their own little set of dialogue. A little package of dialogue that's theirs. I've made individual JSON files for the dialogue. That was a whole headache. I will get into it. And I just click and drag them into this bit here. And so the code that reads a JSON and prints the JSON doesn't need to do anything special. It just needs to, if I'm near an NPC and I press the button, it runs whatever dialogue JSON is in the NPC. So I make a new instance of an NPC, and then let's do it right now. Do it right now. Let's instantiate child scene. NPC, right? Yeah, we got a new NPC. Let's put him here, and do Redman. So now we got Redman, and just look over here. We got to transform him, position Y 1 meter, because everything is there. So we put Redman here. We got like them. Yeah. Put Redman over there. Think that's okay? So now got this guy. That's Juska. I'm also going to do a thing where it shows their name above their head when... Do you see that? It jittered for a second. It sometimes still does that. I don't really know if that's impossible. This is able to, like, you can get rid of that completely, but whatever. So now, Redman does have all of the things associated with another NPC, but he doesn't have a JSON file. So if I press the button, it says, there's no dialog file .data, bitch. So I'm going to make his JSON file later, I guess. So that's how I would make new NPCs, which is great. It means, like, as long as I have, you know, creativity to type up some dialogue in a JSON file, I can make a whole other NPC and have them say completely different things with, like, no extra code required. It's so fucking sick. So, okay. So that's going through the main. Let's go through... NPC is very big. Let's go through the camera follower. Camera control Lamau. Right, so camera follow player, because we've got a camera and it follows the player. And here's how it happens. So export variable target node 3D. That, if I go to... This is the camera pivot, not the camera follower. That's the camera itself. This is the pivot. I think we make it like this. They did this in the tutorial, in like the Godot introduction to making your first 3-dimensional game. They explained that a pivot is a point and you can rotate it around, and this will inherit that rotation. But if you rotate the camera, the view of the camera might like roll or yaw or pitch in a way that it's like 3-dimensional rotations are fucky. They're very strange. So having a pivot to do that is like better, I think. I understand as the case. I don't know the maths, but I know it's confusing. Anyway, camera follow player, this script here is linked to this thing. So it extends node 3D because this is a node 3D. It is not a specific node type other than it being 3D. So it extends this, meaning that this is what this is related to, which means, if I understand correctly, that when something extends, you know, this node, anything I reference that's like inherent to a node 3D, it will not need to be like, you will not need to explain to this script what the qualities of a node 3D are, and specifically this one. So like inspector, it has transform, it has position, it has visibility. I will not need to explain what visibility means to this script because it's already extending that. I think that's how it works. Pretty sure. So we've got 4 exported variables. We've got target. If I go here, the target is the player. So anytime I use this target in the code, it is referring to a specific node 3D, which is that node 3D, which is the player. If I wanted to change it to something else, it'll change it to something else. So I could potentially change what the player is. I don't think I will, but like potentially, you know. Move speed, that's the speed. What is the speed of what? This is the camera. This is the move speed of the camera. Why is it 10? Oh, that's because when I control the camera, I think this is rotate speed. Rotate speed comes into play when I rotate the camera by using the right analog stick to move it around the camera, the player, and it's at 2 right now. The move speed, I guess because we use it in here, it's like default as set as 10. So if it was like really slow, yes. So if let's say this is fucking slow as heck, and this is just 1. The move speed of the camera is 1. That means the player can very easily outrun the camera. The camera is moving towards, but the move speed is so slow, it cannot do it. And it's like, oh my god, give me a break. Oh my god, you're so fast. So that's that. So that was set at 10. And that's why it's set at 10. Rotate speed, as I explained, is down here. It's got to do with input and offset. What's the offset? I forget. See, this is the part of the code where I was just starting, and I didn't really understand a lot of the camera stuff. I got a lot of help from my brother. So this is going to be the challenging part to explain. So a variable offset being a vector 3, which is a floating point coordinates, so like 0, 0, 0. So it's a bunch of coordinates in a 3D space. So offset bunch of coordinates. Then we got other variables. We've got target pitch, the float value. That's the pitch of the camera. Which if you imagine an airplane, it's like if the nose is pointed up or down. That's pitch. Roll is whether it's doing a roll like the wings are going side to side, up and down. And a yaw is if a yaw is if it's turning left or right. That's right, I think. Anyway, the pitch is a float value. Float value meaning it's not an integer. An integer is full single numbers, 1, 2, 3. Float values can be decimal points, can be very precise, and float from one integer to the other. I'm sure that's why it's called a float. Interpolation speed, that's just sort of for... that's a float value for how fast it zooms from the correct to the current pitch to the target pitch. That's the smoothing thingy. That makes sense. All right, so func process delta. Delta is frames per second, or rather the time since the last frame, I think, is how it's been described. It's basically every frame process stuff. So these are all happening every frame. So global position of this node 3D, this camera pivot, equals global position move towards target, which is the player in this instance. So it moves towards, which is a function inherent to Godot, returns a new vector moved towards 2 by the fixed delta amount, will not go past the final value. So they will, that's just a handy Godot thing. We have a lot of those. So global position of the camera is the same, well, it becomes the global position that moves towards the target's global position with an offset that we explain here. So if we want to make it move towards the player, but not right up into their face, that's the offset. And then the delta, so we move towards this position, this vector 3 position, which is the global position plus the offset, comma delta times move speed. So this is the location, move towards this location at this speed, I think. So that's how that works. And then camera input, which is every frame we want to run this function, which is explaining what the camera does, delta, every frame. I feel like that might be, it seems like it's, like, is that redundant? Probably not. Because it's processing camera input every frame, and camera input is doing this every frame. Seems redundant, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it is very important. Some things I just don't get why they are the case. And then under that we got current pitch. This is the pitch thing. Rotation degrees dot x. So we get the rotation degrees of the node 3D. That's what we're extending. And then the new pitch is a lerp angle, linear interpolation, I think, of the current pitch, the target pitch, the interpolation speed. I don't know what the commas are doing. I think that's some of the confusion here. Like, if I were to laymanize this, I don't know what I would say. Like, the new pitch is equals doesn't mean they're checking if it's equal to. A double equal sign means if they're checking if it is equal to this, but an equal sign by itself means we are making it so. So the new pitch is going to be a lerp angle, which I guess requires something in a you know what? We can control this. Okay, so here's what is explaining. So variant lerp. So from one variant to another variant with a certain weight. That's how it's explaining. So the lerp, linear interpolation from A to B at this speed. That's actually very easy to understand. So the current pitch is the variable here, which we get from the rotation degrees. The target pitch is the one we set. The interpolation speed is also one we set, and delta is always the delta. So rotation degrees, so outside of that variable, we got two variables defined there, and then rotation degrees x equals new pitch. So what this is doing is every frame, the rotation degrees is becoming the new pitch. So the current pitch is becoming the new pitch. And the new pitch is defined as this. So every frame, the current pitch becomes the new pitch, which changes. I almost have it. It's just hard to comprehend sometimes. The current pitch becomes the rotation degrees x. The rotation degrees x is the new pitch. So basically we're saying the current pitch, every frame turns into the new pitch, and the new pitch is defined by the current pitch with these other things. So as the target pitch gets closer to, as we get closer to the target pitch, this formula changes, and so the rotation degrees for the next frame is slightly different. And that's what the linear interpolation is for, and the interpolation speed is for, is to make it so that the current pitch doesn't snap to being the new pitch. It means that every frame, it will slowly move its way towards the desired angle in a smooth, linear, interpolated way. So as you can see, if I move it as far as I can, it moves fast and then slower and slower and slower until it is finally stopped at the exact pitch that it wants to be. So that's how that works. That's what interpolation is. Thank you for listening. Rotation degrees x is also equal to a clamp, so that it can't go further than this. I honestly don't know why I have this part. I think this is already constrained by other parts of the camera code, but who cares? It's not ruining everything. I'll leave it for now. You know what? Let's Control K to hash that out. Yeah, it's completely, like, you can move this far down normally. You can move this far up. These clamps, this clamp is elsewhere in the code, so I actually do not need this, because I just turned it into a comment with Control K, which added a hash to the front of it, which means the code does not listen to that bit of code anymore, and nothing changed. It's actually fine. So epic. Okay, camera input delta. So every frame it runs this code. So this code is here. If the input is action pressed means returns true if you're pressing the action event. So there's various different ways this can be done. You can do input is action, or input is action just pressed. And I learned later that when I press the interact button, lifting up the button also counts as an input because is action pressed. If action just pressed, if you add if is action just pressed or just released, you can define it by being only happening when you release the button or push the button, but not either of them. This one is either of them because camera input is using an analog stick. Doesn't really matter. Although, no, don't try and ruin this. This is fine. But yeah, is action pressed, rotate cam left. Now, rotate cam left is in quotes because it is the same name as in the project settings. I go to the input map. This is where you define what things are called and what buttons correspond to those things. So move left, move right, move forward, move back. These are all 3D things, and you can use WASD and also the joypad axis. Basically, you just add event. If you want to add a new thing, it listens for an input. I could say T. If I press T, it'll go right. I don't want that, so cancel, but that's how you would do it. And so I've got the rotate cam left, right, up, down, and camera toggle for camera stuff. Rotate cam left, right, up, down. So these are all similar. So if the input is rotate cam left, rotate the vector 3 up. Now I think vector 3 up is like the third one, the middle one, meaning up, meaning y-axis. So like upwards, that's the vector. So rotate around the axis of straight up, meaning rotate in a spirally orbit, rather than rotate freely. If I didn't put the up there, I would just be able to rotate the camera all which ways, but all I want is to go left and right around the character. So as you see, I can press up to go down, down to go up, whatever, and then left and right, just orbit. I can do a combination of down and up by doing, diagonal things. So I can still do like a circular movement with the camera, but if I just want to go around the character, it's very simple. And if I didn't have a controller and I had like keyboards or some other thing, if I wanted to have it like L1, R1, change the camera's orbit around the character, then I could use the same thing, and I would use vector 3 up to say that that's the Y value, that is the axis. Rotate around the axis every frame times rotate speed, which I've defined here. So I can change that and make it rotate really quick. Same thing for rotate right, same thing for rotate, well, not exactly the same thing for rotate cam up, because that is global transform basis X. So I don't remember what basis means. The basis is a matrix containing vector 3 as its columns. These vectors can be interpreted as basis vectors of local coordinate systems traveling with the object. Wow, I don't know what that means. So basis 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0 1. 3 vector 3, so 3 3 3. Okay. It's a matrix containing 3 vector 3s. So rotate global transform basis, but only X. Why you put basis there? Is that important? This is definitely part that I didn't understand while it was being written. I was like, okay, I'll just put basis. What's basis doing? If I do global transform X, will it fucking break? Let's find out. Oh, it doesn't like it. So cannot find property X on the base. Okay. Okay, I see. So that's just, oops. So that's just making it so that it knows what is doing X. Basis matrix X vector. Okay, so X, Y, Z. Understood. Equivalent to array index 0, 1, and 2. Alright. I don't get it, but I believe in you. So rotate speed. Oh yeah, and this is rotate cam left, right. It's the same thing, but rotate is minused because you're going the other direction. Same with this, rotate speed is minused. Or inverted, I don't know. Then there's the global rotation, which is not an if statement, it's just in part of the function because it's not underneath this. Global rotation is the global rotation clamp. So this is the clamp that I didn't need for the pitch because it's already happening here. The clamp is clamping this vector 3 by these things. So the z-axis, never move that, global rotation. And then we've got like the minimum and the maximum. So the maximum it can go is almost to 0, and this is -1, almost to -1. And then the y is pi and minus pi. I don't remember why that's the case, but I'll leave it be. Certain things just don't need to be understood. But I want to understand it, so let's do 0. Let's put them at 0 and fucking see what the fuck happens. So they're clamped. I see. So the y value, the middle one, it's not letting me move left or right. So if I think about the y value as like a spear going straight down through this guy's head, and then you go forwards, like from our perspective right now, forwards from the character's nose out, that's the angle we're talking about with the y angle. So it's constrained at 0, so it cannot go to the left or right even one amount. So pi means that it can go 360, like a circle, the value of pi. So it can go from minus pi to pi, which is, I think, it doesn't need to be that much. I could define it as like a big number and a really small number, and it will never reach that number without also reaching the other number. It will just never clamp. We don't want the y-axis to clamp because we want to go all the way around the character. If we set it as not pi, we might be able to go all the way left until we get to 360, and then we can't go any further, and then we'd have to start going right again, which would suck. We want it to be all the way around in any direction, from any direction. So that clamp is basically just making it so that we can't push the camera up or down too far. And I define them by those numbers. So that's the camera following the player. Yes. Yes. Alright. We're doing well. So, first person camera. This one's fun. So we've got a variable. Where's the first person? Okay, it's not in main, but it is in... There it is. So the first-person camera is inside the player because it is defined as being the player's perspective, the POV shot. So it being a child of the player node means that it inherits all of the positioning of the player. And that's great. That's really good. So the first-person camera... rotate speed is 2. I think that's the same as the normal camera. I can change it if I want first person to be different. So that's good. Function on ready when it's loaded. Pause player input, but So pause player input is a script that is not connected to a node, and it is on auto load, so it loads before anything else. And because it's on auto load, it's a global variable, which means these variables can be accessed by anyone in the game as long as they begin the thing by mentioning the name of the script. So pause player input. It was initially just for pausing the player. I might have to change the way the words, because it's not really about pausing the player, it's more about various other things. But it's too late. I mean, it's not too late. I could go through every instance of pause player input and just update it to whatever I name the script if I want to rename the script. But at the moment, I haven't done that. And that's okay for me. For this, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, I'll get around to it. That should be on my list of things to do, just to keep things clean and understandable. But anyway, where was I? It's on the first person camera. So pause player input has a bool called first person active. By default, a bool is false, but I set it as false in here just because gotta make sure. You can't be sure about code. It's magic. It does what it wants. So when it's loaded in, it's set to false. Process data. This is another process thing. Every frame. Toggle first person. Toggle first person. Oh yeah, it's checking every frame. It's doing this every frame. I don't know if that's a good idea, because it's a function. Maybe it's just, it's good to have like anything that you need to press checking for in the every second, every frame, to see if the person has pressed the button, because this is all talking about like if the button is pressed and the parameters are allowed, it will do all of these things. Someone's listening to Lewis Cole downstairs. It's very loud. It's very cool. Camera input. So that's the other thing that's happening. And this is hashtag hash very funny, because this is exactly the same as the main camera. So if I go into the game, we got the camera movement, and if I press the toggle first person, it's exactly the same camera. And it just so happens that because the numbers are exactly the same, the speed of the camera rotation, when I turn around, the other camera is also turning around. So when I toggle them, they're in roughly the same place, which makes it seem correct. Except the first-person camera is not constrained quite so much as this one. Yeah. Oh yeah, that was Redman. I crashed it. Okay, so it's very funny because it just so happens to work. If I wanted to make this better, I would not have them rely on being exactly the same numbers. You know, if I wanted to change the numbers even a little bit, these clamps don't need to be the same, but all this, like what's the rotate speed? Happens to be 2. If I change that, everything is going to be misaligned. So when you go first person, you might be facing the other direction. For now, it's fine, but it is very funny. Okay, so every frame it's toggling first person, it's checking for toggle first person, and it's checking for camera input. So, toggle first person, if input is action just pressed, that just means only when you push it down, not when you lift it up. You know, you can't do half A presses on this baby. You can have is action held, I think. You can do like is action various interactions of buttons. Push down, lift it up, held down, or is being held, whatever. This is just if you push it down, camera toggle, which is an interact thing set up in my input map, camera toggle down here. So that's camera toggle. And it's defined as the select button in my case, and so if you press the camera toggle button and pause player input first person active is false, make this camera, first person camera, the current camera. This is another inherent thing to GD script, make current. Cameras have a make current thing, makes this camera the current camera for the viewport. If the camera node is outside the scene tree, it will attempt to become current once it's added. I don't know what that second part means, but it just seems to work. I just put this in there and I thought it was going to be a nightmare, but make current does actually just make this the current camera, and then this is referencing the character of the player, because this is in the player, this is the character. Basically, it takes that, and it says the visibility of that character, like this eye, toggle visibility, makes it false, and then it changes the pause player input first person active is true. So now that I'm in first person and I press the button again, pause player input versus is true, clear the current camera, and then it returns to the other camera, which is the player camera. Just so happens to work out. I was worried that like clear current would like make it go to one of the other cameras. Let me just close these documents. One of the other cameras being the dialogue camera. It chooses a dialogue camera that only plays when you're talking to another person. It might go to one of those, but it doesn't. It goes to the main camera. So I don't know why that's working. I think it's just because it's the first one up the tree. Let me click on this. If this is the current camera, remove it from being current. If enable next is true, which is implied by not saying anything, request to make the next camera current if any. I don't know what they mean by next camera, but if I go up the chain, go to player, and then main, player, camera pivot, camera follower. That's the next one up the chain. You know what? NPC has their camera in here, the conversation camera, but because the player in main is above them, that might be why it's working. So let's test this. Let's put the player underneath these ones that work. I don't know about Redman yet. Let's play it. And then we're like, oh, toggle first person. Oh, I'm in first person then. Boop. Okay, it does go back to the current camera. I think next camera checks if it's like on somehow. Also, I've noticed something. Oh no, it's fine. It's all fine. It's all working. Okay, so that doesn't make a difference. I guess because they're all siblings, they work at the same time. So it wouldn't go to a sibling, but it would go... Well, this is also a sibling. Oh, here we go. This is what it is. So current is on. That's a property of this camera 3D. So current is on. So for this code, first person camera, we make it the current because if we go to the player first person camera, this one is off by default. By default, it is not a current camera. It's not a camera that we can jump to. So when it says next camera, this one will not be considered because it's off. But the code for make current forces it to become the current even if it's like by default. It doesn't cycle through the cameras to find one. It just makes this one turn on and become the current camera. And when we clear it, it goes back to the only other camera that is by default current, which is this one. So if we go to the NPC, we check this camera here, I think, yes. I haven't made this a current camera. So if I did make it a current camera, it could go to that one, but it doesn't. So it's important to know that that's how it's working, because if I ever make another camera that is current by default, it will flip to maybe one or the other depending on where they are in the tree, and I might not want that. Okay, so make current camera, make the character visible, because we don't want... I mean, we could have it so they're visible, but it was just sort of like, if they're visible, they don't, like, change their position, because the camera is not tied to the position of the character. It is just rotating the same way. Like I say, very funny. It's just rotating. It's got nothing to do with the way the character is facing. It's got everything to do with the input. And so, much in the same way that when I move left and right, the camera doesn't rotate with me. The camera is only rotated like this. The camera input has no effect on the camera's rotation, and the same is true for first person. So like, if I'm walking forwards, my character's looking forwards, but now my character would be, I'm looking behind their head, If they were visible, their nose would appear, then it would disappear. Nose would appear, disappear, because their nose would be rotating around out in front of the camera, and the camera just happens to be inside his head when it was doing that. So, so we turn it off just because I prefer it that way. I like the full spectrum of view. You know, like when in a game you look down, you can see your feet. I don't really care about that. It doesn't matter to me. And it's extra code, so like, fuck it. I don't want that. So yes, input pause player input, and then visible equals false, and then when you toggle it back, it goes to clear current, goes to find the camera, makes it true that the character is visible, and switches this back to false. We are not in first person. So that's the first person camera. Camera control, I don't know whether I use this. I think I do, but I'm not sure. Oh, I do use this. Alright. So. I talked about the player, right? No, I didn't. Right, this is the player. This is just the player movement, really. Like all of this, that's like when you move the camera, when you move the left analog stick, they do stuff. But let's do this. So class name player. We use that for some other thing, I forget. We got the variable speed, full acceleration, camera follower. And the camera follower is a node 3D. And if I click on here, the node 3D camera follower, assign. Maybe this is outdated. Well, I'll think about that. I think the camera that follows the player does not need to be part of the player because it's like a child of it. Oh no, not that one. The other one. I think it gets to position target node 3D. Okay, so alright, so what I've done is I've made it so that the camera knows what the player is, knows what its target is, which is defined where is it defined? Camera follower. Right, yeah, it's the camera pivot. The camera pivot is the thing that has the script. And this is the player. So the camera is pivoting, looking. The camera pivot knows what the player is. The player does not need to know what the camera is. In fact, get rid of that. We don't need to export it, at least. We can do that. Because it's a node 3D. I think we don't need to. I mean, exporting it and unexporting it just make it so that you can't see it in this inspector area. But yeah, the player script is to do with the player. And so it's exporting the speed and the full acceleration, which I can change there. Camera follower node 3D, character node 3D. This is defining the character. If we go to the player thing. So this is called a character, it's not the same thing. It's not spelled the same, so variable character is node 3D. Node 3D is just a thing, you know. It's the most basic 3D object with a transform 3D visibility settings. Just telling it what type of variant it is. So target velocity is vector 3, 0. So that's like velocity is how you're moving, and the target is nothing. So if you're not doing anything, it should be not moving. So on ready, the character, get node character. And that's this. I think. Yeah, so this variable character is getting node, fetches the node, character, and the character is this because that's what I set it as, and the mesh instance is the mesh. So I'm a little unclear as to why this is the way it's done. It could be an exported character variable that I would like drag the mesh instance into, and I wouldn't need to do it on ready, but I guess on ready is fine as well. Pause player input.player equals self. I don't know what this does. Oh wait, no, yeah. So var player is player, and this is a class name. So we've defined a class in this player script, and pause player input has its own variant player, which is this. So other scripts can look at pause player input, see this variant, and know that it is a class that it contains all of this stuff. I kind of know what this means, but let's keep going. So function physics process data delta, if pause player input enabled is true. So that's what the dialogue system is doing. Anytime I talk to a player in the NPC script I'll get to, it says player input enabled bool is true by default. When you're talking to a player, they set it to false. And so in the player script, if this is enabled, do all of the physics for the player. So this is all of this. And if it's not, then it don't. So once you're talking to an NPC, physics is disabled, basically. There may be a better way to do that, but I like this because I understand it. And I'm not like set in my ways. I'm just starting out. I'm like a novice. So if there's better ways to do things, leave a comment telling me about it. So variant direction is vector3 0. So variables inside functions are variables that the function has as part of them. Variables at the top are things that any other function or any other part of the script can check and react to. So if you want a variable that only does things during a function and not outside of the function, like if you have two functions that change a variable up here at the same time, it might get fucked up. So you just want the variable to be nestled into a function. So if the function isn't doing anything, these variables also don't change. So camera direction left equals camera follower, and we got camera, no, we got camera followers node 3D. Camera direction left, camera follower, go global transform, get global transform. Basis Z cross vector 3 up. Don't get it. So we're defining this that we use later as the camera follower, which is a node 3D that is not... Maybe I do need to export it. Let's see what happens now that I've not made an export. Yeah, it's fucking up. Oops. Oh, what's going on? Asset script player function physics process. What's you upset about? Get global transform on a null value. What did I do? Okay, alright. I made a grave error. So what I did was I turned this and made it not export because I clicked on player and the camera follower there's nothing there. I assumed that there was nothing there, therefore it wasn't important, but I didn't realize that in main, this player obviously is an instantiated child. It is not, this is like default player, this is player that exists in the main game, and it does have a camera pivot in that camera follower area. So what it was doing was like, I thought that there was nothing there because by default there is nothing there. So if I had the player in a different level, let's say, I would need to give it a camera thing. Or if I put this player in a different game, I would need to give it a new camera by dragging it into this export variable camera follower node 3D. So because I got rid of the export, it got rid of the pivot in the main thing, but I didn't notice that because I thought it was already gone and there wouldn't be a problem. So I put export back thinking it would fix it, and it didn't fix it. And now I know that you got to be paying attention to which version of the player you're looking at. I assumed just because I was on player that it would be the same as the player in main, but of course all of these NPCs are not the same NPC that is the NPC. They are instantiated, they are instanced, they are specific guys. So Gun Girl here has her dialogue file, but in NPC, there is no dialogue file, because by default an NPC has no dialogue until I make it for that specific NPC that is. So that's the solution to that. Didn't take long. I asked my brother what the problem was, and I didn't realize. So there we go. So that is important. I just didn't realize because I'm stupid, and this was early on in development. I was just sort of following tutorials blindly. So here we go. Camera direction left, camera direction forward. Yeah, camera follower, get global transform. So get global transform of the camera pivot and do the basis cross vector 3 up. Now I don't know what that means, but I can understand that it is, we're defining a variable direction left, and it's getting the global transform of the node 3D, which is the camera pivot, and getting the z-axis and crossing it with the vector 3 up. Whatever that means, I don't know, but we're doing the different thing with the forward. So basics x cross vector 3 up. I tried to look at cross, see what it does. Returns the cross product. So it was like, what do you mean? Obviously that's something I can look up. Cross product. It's probably a code term. That's fine. Then these ones make more sense to me. Horizontal input, forward input. Get axis, move left, move right. Get axis, move forward, move back. So this is for player movement. Horizontal. It's kind of a silly name for it because it's like in 3D, what is the horizon? But it's movement left and right. That's just what I've called it. Forward, forward and back. Movement input strength is vector 2, horizontal forward input length. So that is like making it so that in a 2D vector, these two things, dot length, returns the length magnitude of this vector. So the input strength is vector 2. I understand this to be making sure that if I go like both of these move left and forward at the same time, we're not doubling our speed, or velocity, I should say. We're not doubling the velocity because we're moving both left and forward. We're just moving left and forward and only at one speed, I think. But I don't understand how that's coming through in this exactly. Character global rotation y equals lerp angle. Character global rotation y pivot, global rotation y delta 10 movement input strength. Now this is the character. This is the rotation of the visual character thing. Global rotation y, meaning if you stab it through the head with a spike, how does it rotate? It goes roundy round. So that rotation is a lerp angle. Pivot. Oh yeah, in player there's pivot. I just put it there. This is like not. No, this is fine, but it's not great. You've got the collision shape, the mesh, and then the pivot, and they're all just like hanging out as siblings. Probably not the best, but anyway, it's called pivot. Rotation of that, delta times 10 times movement input strength, which is a vector 2 global rotation. So this is smoothing out the rotation with a linear interpolation based on this shit. So like from A, character rotation Y, to B, pivot, global rotation Y, and the delta times 10 times movement input strength is the weight of the linear interpolation. So how smooth it is defined by that. From A to B and this amount of strength. And this pivot is down here as well. If direction is not vector 3, 0, meaning if you're moving, direction equals direction normalized, pivot, look at position, which is a vector 3, plus direction, which is defined somewhere. Direction equals vector 3, 0. So if it's not 0, because in various other places we're adding shit to it, vector 3 up. So pivot look at, so the pivot of the character looks at the direction and our position with the vector 3 with the thing. So it doesn't look in every angle, it only swivels around turny-woundy if it's got a spike through the head. That's what that means. So the pivot is looking at it, but the model is not looking at it. We want the model to catch up to the pivot. And if we didn't have this, it was very shaky, it was very jerky. Any small movement of the left analog stick would make it go bleh, bleh, because it was happening immediately. And I kind of like the idea of it smoothly turning around as you press the button. So we got this. And so it's like, it's very subtle, but like you can tell the model is lagging behind slightly the position that the character is moving in. I can obviously change the variables to make it quicker or sluggishier, but that's what's happening with that code. So if input in the physics process still, if input is action press move left, or, so I think this is or. I'm gonna do that and see what happens. Yeah, it's the same thing. So that's like the two straight lines, the two, what are they called? These things. That means or in like C++ or C# or C something, C major. But in Godot you can use or and it means the same thing, and it's red, which means I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, I know what that word is, it's important. So I probably prefer that just visually to look at. So input is action press move right, direction plus equals. I was told what this means. I think it's sort of like it's adding or equal. I don't know. I don't really know, but I know that that's what you put. It's hard to Google that because it's like, what does plus equals mean? Actually, it's not hard to Google. Let's do, what the fuck does plus equals? In addition assignment operator, plus equals is a shorthand way to make a value, to add a value to a variable. The code x plus equals y is equivalent to x equals x plus y. Right, so this is saying that direction is direction plus camera direction left times minus horizontal input for this part. And then if move forward or move back, direction is direction minus camera direction forward times minus forward input. I minused some of these because it was doing the opposite of what I expected, but this works. So the direction is the direction minus camera direction forward, which is defined here as some stuff. So I think what this is doing, yes, that's right. The camera direction, camera follower, trying to think. Yeah, so if I move the camera to the, before it would just be like global positioning. It would not relate to the camera at all. So if the camera is looking this way, I go left, it goes left. If I change the camera and I go left on the left analog stick, it goes left. Otherwise, the left would not be related to the direction the camera is facing, and it would not make sense at all what pressing left would do. Because pressing left, if you think of this side as the board as the left, I would always go this way. Even if the camera was here and I pressed the left button, it would go this way. I pressed down there, but you know what I mean. So this is making it so that it is related to the camera that we have. So I can hold a button and then swivel the camera, and the character will look like it's not moving, but it is in fact moving in a circle. Pretty good. And then we looked at this already. If direction is not vector 3, 0. Direction is direction normalized, pivot look at blah blah blah. Target velocity. So this target velocity is vector 3, 0. So the x of vector 3 equals direction x, which is defined here. So yeah, the target velocity which is a variable, is the direction times the speed. And the direction is determined by things. Target velocity y, it's just what it wants to do. I'm sort of running low. I'm running out of steam. I might finish this later. Target velocity z is direction z times speed. So this is taking the velocity, the z of the target velocity, and it is making it equal to the direction z times the speed, which is another variable. And the velocity is a vector 3. So it's a coordinate system, and it's making it so that the direction which it is put in here. Yeah, that's right. So the direction is added to or taken away from based on inputs. And then that direction down here is times by speed to give the velocity. Yes, 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 I get it. Yes. If not is on floor, that's it returns true if the body collided with the floor on the last call of move and slide. Move and slide is also funny. So target velocity y is equal to target velocity y minus full acceleration times delta. So I accelerate downwards every frame, or I just fall every frame if I'm not on the floor. This game has not got jumping in mind, so it's not going to come into play that much, but just so that it has gravity. That's basically just gravity doing that. Velocity equals target velocity, and the velocity is a thing. So I've defined a variable called velocity, but it only becomes velocity if I say the velocity bit. this light baby blue version of velocity. It's the serious one. It's the real one. This is just a made up little fake one that I designed myself in my back garden. And then move and slide moves the body based on velocity. If the body collides with another, it will slide along the other body rather than stop immediately. So it's sort of like an inherent Godot like basic movement thing. It handles collisions and slides against them. Very handy for someone who doesn't want to bother with all that bullshit. So that's just in physics. If pause player input is enabled, that is, all of this can happen. If it is not enabled, none of this can happen. If pause player input player look at pivot look at pause player input dot look at target location. So I just go to pause player input, just check. So look at target location is a vector 3. Player look at is a bool, which means if this bool is true, pivot, so the pivot of the player, look at pause player, and we know that the direction of the guy is this. So it follows the pivot, which means anything if you make the character look at anything, it'll smoothly move based on this bit of code. Pivot look at pause player input dot look at target location, which is a vector 3. So it looks at a target location, and we define that in the NPC part. Character, global rotation, lerp angle. Okay, so we copied the thing down there, but it's got nothing to do with movement input strength, so that's why we needed to copy this part. So if it's player look at, continually keep the smooth movement code and pivot look at thing. Now this is for the dialogue in the NPC thing, which is the biggest, longest thing yet. So I will take a break and I will be back with a cup of tea or something. Okay, so NPC. So this is the stuff that took the longest to figure out. Oh boy. But I figured it out, I think. Let's go over it. So we got extends node 3D, so this the NPC has got all this stuff. We got the character, we got the pivot, we got the conversation camera, we got the interact indicator, which is a little triangle. We got a nameplate and a name, which I haven't put together yet. I haven't figured out how to do that yet, but that's there. We got the area collision shape. That's the area around the NPC that defines when we're close enough to be able to talk to them. It's a little sphere. Alright. Signal interacted with. I don't know too much about signals. I kind of don't really understand them at all. They're like a Godot special thing. And I don't know when you're supposed to use signals as opposed to global things like this. Who knows? But for now, we got one signal here interacted with. We got a variable conversation index. This is about the conversation stuff. Player nearby bool. That's a very easy one to understand. If the player is nearby, it's true. Talking is if they're talking. Have met, which is a thing I wanted to do. When you first meet an NPC, they say a line or two, introducing themselves and like saying, "Who are you?" And then after that, they don't say that. I've been playing Dark Cloud a lot recently to make a video about Dark Cloud, and this is the way they do conversations. You talk to a person, they're like, "Oh, whoa, who are you? My name's this," and then they cycle through the list of like things they say. After that, they don't introduce themselves a second time, so it's just sort of, have met, middle thing. Text box, rich text label. So that is in the UI. Well, we got the rich text label here, which is this. I just randomly got a font from online and put it in there. It looks pretty good. Right, let's go back to scripts. So we got text box, which is rich text. We got camera animation player. That. Camera angles. There's an array of camera angles that it can choose from. This will all make sense later. An export variable dialog file resource. So this is the important part for the dialog file resource. Resource meaning what? Resource is a base class for all Godot specific resource types, serving primarily as data containers. Since they are inherent from ref counted, resources are reference counted and freed when no longer in use. They can also be blah blah blah, but it's a bunch of data. At least in this situation, it is a bunch of data. So the export, if I go to the MPC, the dialog file is empty because it's the default. I understand that now. If I go to main, I click on GunGirl. GunGirl's got her GunGirl dialog.json. And the way I get it in there is I just I put it in the file area, and if I can drag it in there, fucking easy. So that's that. So function I'm ready. Text box equals get node root UI conversation text. So get node UI is also loaded globally, so anything can get the UI. So conversation text, it gets that. Pause player input first person active to false. So when the NPC is ready, first person active shouldn't be true. I might need to change this if I want to make it so that you can go somewhere in first person and stay in first person. But for the moment, we set it to false on load, I guess. Let me just check that. Like in player. Oh, it's a camera follow player. Yeah, you know. I don't want to mess around too much. I think this is not important. Because when the NPC loads in, it's just going to say false every time. And what if I want to be in first person? But we can think about that later. Text box visible equals false. So you're not talking to them when they load. You have to press the button for that. Camera control equals camera angle. Oh, camera control. Camera angle. I think it's just getting the camera control. I don't know why it's there. I think I was trying to do something and I didn't know how to do it, and so I've left this camera control variable camera angle here. If I go to project settings, auto load. Yeah, camera control is auto loaded. But it's all it's doing is having a camera angle, which is an integer. Probably don't need that to be the case, but let's keep going. Camera animation is animation player, so that $sign is meaning it's taking from here, from here, from here. So camera animation equals this thing. For animation name, so for animation name in camera animation, get animation list. So I want to know what that means. Okay, I can't control click on that for some reason. Is it anywhere else? So one thing I don't really understand is for. It's like, I know a for loop, but the word for doesn't imply a loop to me. I don't really understand how for equals a loop, but I know that it is. So for as many times as animation name in camera I don't understand for. For just doesn't make sense to me in English. I can't explain what for does. I think it's like in camera animation, get the animation list, and then the camera angles, append them to animation name, and then camera animation, just keep doing it until you've got append is like to an end of the array, end of an array. So it's filling up an array on ready. So I guess it's sort of like, instead of saying on every frame, instead of delta, it's just like loop through this until you can't. I guess. camera angles is the name of the array. So it's empty to start with. It fills it up with the list of animation names in this. We've got 4. I'll look at those. So in 3D, got a preview. This is backwards for some reason, but it works. So like usually the eyes and nose would be on the other side. I think it's something to do with the z-axis being negative when I made the model, and I couldn't rotate it. But it doesn't matter, because like this will be like the players here, guys here, talking to them over the shoulder. Camera angle 3, camera angle 4. It's like they're going to be looking at the player here. I will change some of these, or all of them, because I was looking at Dark Cloud again, and they have them shot from like the waist up most of the time. So they're filling up the frame. It's not so much like wild all over the place camera angles. It's just sort of 3 or 4. You can see them. You can't see their legs. It's a close-up shot with their face and your face, like a side view. Whatever. That's all things I can edit with this. It's an animation with a single frame of keyframe position and rotation for the pivot or the camera. I don't remember. One of them. Anyway, that gets added to the array. Have met equals false, because it's loading it in. You have not met them yet. Function physics process delta. So every frame, interact indicator, look at player. I kind of don't like this. It kind of looks silly. Like, it kind of looks okay in first person when you're like, oh, it's a triangle, and it's always looking at me. But it's not looking at the camera, it's looking at the player. So like if I'm off the side, you can see that the three-dimensionality of that, and it's like pointing away from the camera. You know, it's not quite good, especially in like this, because you can see it's like doing all this shit. I'm like, I'd rather it just spin by itself without needing to look at the player. That's not important. So I can get rid of that later, but for now, current rotation equals interact indicator rotation gives new rotation. Yeah, this is just like the interact indicator. If talking, character, so that's this. This is the mesh. Global rotation, Y lerp angle, character, global rotation. So this is the spinny aroundy thing. It'll, every frame, lerp that shit rotatey wise, so that you know, the pivot and the character, the way it's looking, and the model's direction are lerped slowly and smoothly. So if we check that shit, we go here, they're not looking in my direction. Oh, now they are. So we're both doing the same, like, spinny around when we're talking. Yeah. A little hard to see from some angles, but these are the camera angles it's cycling through. It's choosing a random one. So that's that. Input event. If event is action pressed, interact, and player nearby, which is the bool, if you remember, interacted with emit. Oh yeah, and these are the on area 3D body entered, which is if so body. Is there something defined by body? If another 3D body enters this body, and we've got it so that it only interacts with the player through the layer and the mask system, so I'll quickly go over that. So the NPC, we've got like, is it? Oh, it's area 3D. Yeah, so area 3D collision shape. Area 3D has a layer, so I've defined layer 3 as NPC, layer 2 as ground, and layer 1 as player. So it mask with player, and it's layer 3. So this is where it is, and this is what it listens to. So it will not listen to the ground interacting with it or an NPC interacting with it. It will only notice that a player is nearby, And that's why the code here doesn't need to specify anything. It just knows that it's a player because it's the only thing it's looking for. If I need to make more complicated things with more than just players interacting with them, I'll have to change this. But it's really just going to be a bunch of NPCs and I'm going to talk to them. I might make them walk around, and if that's the case, I will need to figure out how to make them notice each other and not like bump into each other or stand in the exact same spot. So that'll have to change, but for now it's fine. And I'm printing see you later just to, so that was the debug thing. Printing as debugging technique is very useful. It's just letting you know if something is actually running or not, because print just goes here. It's like there's nothing else it needs as a prerequisite. It lets you know if something's happening. You all knew that. I'm just showing how smart I am for also knowing it. Yeah, interact indicator visible for true and false. Doesn't matter. I don't care about... Well, actually, I do care about the visible true and false. It's just the looking at the player I don't like. So if input is action pressed, interact, and the player is nearby, interacted with emit. So that's the signal at the top, interacted with. And if it's not talking currently, run talking. So that means if I'm nearby the player and I press the interact button again, it won't do this multiple times. It will only do it if I'm not talking and run talking. So talking is here. If I have met is true, then run conversation. If I have not met, then run first meeting. Run conversation, run first meeting are very similar. So I will go through run conversation because that was the main one that I did first. So talking, true. They make the talking boolean true. So if I press the button again, this won't be true. It'll be false. And it won't run talking again. It'll just keep going with the run conversation. Look at the player. That's the thing for making the NPC look at the player, which is... What is that? Oh, that's below. So look at player, let's look at that. Look at player pivot, look at global position, blah, 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 normalized, all that. So player global position minus global position. It's just making it do the thing that it does for the other thing. I'm sort of running it. I know I said I was running out of steam earlier, but I feel like if I've already explained that this is something happening in the player, and it's just copy-pasted but changed slightly for the NPC, I don't need to go over everything again. I don't exactly know what it is. So it says the pause player input player's global position. So the global position minus this, minus the global position. Why is it minusing the global position twice? I don't know. But it's normalizing it. So it sure is normalizing it. So look at the player. If pause player input first person active is false, camera angle choose. So this is so that if the first person camera is online, we don't switch the camera to a dialogue camera. We just allow them to hear the talking in first person, which is pretty cool. A camera angle choose is that, yeah. If camera angle size of the array is greater than 0, random animation equals camera angles randy percent camera angle size. So I think this is just saying camera angles, pick a random one from the size of the array, and then camera animation, play the random animation. Play meaning it's like a thing for making an animation begin, or choosing one. So that's choosing the camera angle. And then pivot the conversation camera. So this conversation camera, make this one the current. So we're making specific cameras the current. And then we're talking. So this is on talking. And on talking, we pause the player input, so the player cannot move their character, so that deactivates the physics. It makes the player look at, so it causes it to be true, so now the player looks at bool. So as we go back to the player, if player look at is true, pivot look at target location. And look at target location, and target location is defined here. Look at target location equals global position of this script's inheritor, which is node 3D, which is this NPC. So it's basically the global position is saying the global position of whatever this script is tied to, which is this NPC character. So this is the truth for all different ones. And then we make the text box visible. The interact indicator we turn off because we don't need to have that floating around when we're talking. Print it's over. I had that print it's over because I initially had a pause function which stopped everything, including pressing the button to continue. So I changed it. I didn't change the print. So I can get rid of the print now. Let's see, it's over, it's begun, it's over, it's begun. So we can just turn that off and that off. We can put them back if we need something to print, but we don't because it's working. Finish talking. Pause player input, so it's undoing all of this. Player look at false. Text box visible is false, so make it invisible. Interactive video. It's just undoing this. But look at target location global position. Is not undoing that because it doesn't need to. Because every time you talk to an NPC, this will run again, and it will update the look at target location, variable. So as long as this is there for any on talking thing function. So on talking, start. Then variable output dialog equals dialog file.data. So I've defined a thing called output dialog. I don't know why it's written like that. I shouldn't have done it like that, but whatever. Let's see if I can fucking break everything. Output dialog. And then output dialog here. Wait, is that? Yeah. See if this fucking breaks everything, because it might be something else. Looking for output dialog. Nope, this is all it needs. So that's good. The naming conventions is like you don't have to name things, but like they're the same way. But it's you do it like either underscores in between and all lowercase, or majuscule, no space, majuscule, new word. I don't know what the difference is, why you would use one or the other. I'm just trying to be consistent because I think it's good, I guess. So dialog file data. So dialog file is the resource up there. So what it does, that's also there. Output dialog equals the data from the JSON file. So conversation equals output dialog conversations conversation index, and the conversation index is 0 by default. Starts at 0. So it's called conversations because in the JSON file that's exactly what I've labeled it as, conversations. So it's looking in the data for conversations and then giving it the index, checking the index. I don't know what the square brackets are doing. I know the index is like it counts up 1, 2, 3 because down here it's like adding 1 once we get to the end of a thing. And then once it's to a certain amount, we go back to 0 to restart it. So it will cycle through the different conversations. And we got the conversation lines here. So like there's an array within an array. We got conversations and then the different lines of dialogue in that conversation, I think. So for conversation line in conversation, the conversation lines down here. So await display conversation text of the conversation line in conversation lines in the JSON. So display conversation text is quite simple. It's got the text box and the text, which is a thing you put in the brackets. I don't know why, but you do. The text is nothing by default, which is why the JSON is important to influence what is put in there. So text box visible characters is 0, and then for I in text, I don't know what the I think is like increments or integer. I fucking don't know. But it goes for loop, text box visible characters plus text is 1, so add 1 to the visible characters, and then await. We create a timer of 0.05, 0.015, and then it times out, and then we do it again, and we go again and again and again until we can't, until the characters are until it's over. That's what the loop is doing, and basically it's saying like on this amount of timeout, we add a new letter to being visible, which means that the letters appear one after the other. It appears very quickly because it's 0.015, but I like it, you know? It's nice and speedy without being an instant flash of all the text at once. And I can also make this a variable that I can export and use as like a control. So if I wanted to have an options menu, I would be able to get this, replace it with like a reference to something, a variable somewhere else, and then have a UI button or something influence this, and so that would update, and so I'd be able to change maybe between like fast, slow, medium, or whatever, and then it'll be like click, click, click. You can put a thing in the UI options menu to change this later. If I replace that float value with a reference to a thingy. I know what I'm talking about. So it looks in the JSON file, gets the conversation index, it displays the conversation text, and then await get tree timer 0.2 timeout. So after this is done, it waits for a timer, just because sometimes you press the button and like you accidentally press it and the text is gone as soon as it's finished. It's like, oh, whoa, I didn't get to read it, and it's moved on. So 0.2 is just a little buffer to make sure that the text is on screen fully for 0.2 seconds before you can interact with it again. That loop is interacted with. So text box text is nothing. Await get tree create timer 0.5 timeout. So after we've shown all of the lines of dialogue, we create a timer 0.5. Then, interacted with again. So basically it's saying interact with, it's waiting for us to press the button to continue, and once all of this is done, it just moves on to text box text 0. Maybe that's 0 because it's like we're showing nothing. Because when they're finished talking, we have 0.5 timeout, and then all of it goes back to nothing. You know, all this happens. Talking is no longer the case. Conversation index +1. If conversation index, output dialog conversations size, but if conversation index is larger than the size of the array, then we set it to 0. And if it's not the case, don't worry about it. So this is basically saying if after we've done a talk, we get to the end of the array of conversations, we set it back to 0 so that when we do it again, it'll choose the first one again and replay the first in the array, and then increment it again with this. After we finish talking, we increment it so that when you talk to them after that, they're playing the next thing in the array of conversations. So that's that bit. And then when it gets to the index is larger, we set it to 0 so it doesn't crash or like look for an index that doesn't exist. We set talking as false twice. Did we need that? I don't think that's supposed to be there. Yeah, we only have it once on first meeting, and that works fine, so we can get rid of that. Talking is false. If pause player input first person active is false, clear the current camera. We don't want to clear the current camera if, we're in first person. So we only clear it if we're not in first person. And then we run finish talking. And finish talking is to undo all of these things that start on talking. So now the player can move again. They don't have to look at the thing. The text box is invisible, and the interact indicator is back to being visible. So it's a whole lot of stuff. And if you're a code expert, you may have been like, oh, that's interesting, that works, that's pretty good. Or like, I could do better than that. That could be cleaned up considerably. If you're a code novice, I don't expect this to be a very good explanation of what has happened. This is not a tutorial. I should probably have said that at the start. I'll say that at the start. So it's not a tutorial. Don't get your hopes up, Jack. So that's how everything works. I think that's all the code and all of the things. I guess I can show you the JSON file. So if I open in File Manager, open that. Okay, here we go. So for Gun Girl, we've got first meeting. In JSON, there's it's curly brackets, square brackets, curly brackets, square brackets. Curly brackets is a thingy, and a square brackets is an array of thingies. That's how I've been told to understand it. So this thingy is every thingy, and within this thingy is the first meeting, which is an array, and conversations, which is an array. And within the first meeting, there's a thingy called the first meeting lines, which is just sort of, the text that displays one bit, then another bit. And if I want multiple different first meeting bits, so like you talk to them once, you get this. You talk to them a second time, you get this. And then you have met after that. Oh yeah, I should go over that as well. I did go over run conversation, but for run first meeting, there's a slight difference in that if the conversation input is larger than the output dialog first meet, I change everything to first meet lines, because it's different in the JSON. Conversation index is 0, but it doesn't loop because we change have met into true. And so this no longer plays, because if have met is true, we do a normal conversation. So if we look at the thing here, let's go back to Joska. He says, hello. That's his first meeting line. My name's Joska. I was in Brown Blue Village before. I don't know how I ended up here. Do you know where this is? That's his second first meeting line. And after this, he will have 1, 2, 2. So he has 2 conversation things to say, and he cycles through them. This is the second one again. The first one again. So he doesn't do the first meeting anymore. And there we have it. That's my game. Few things to do. I want to change the sun, but a lot of it is like small tweaks to how things look. Like the camera angles for dialogue, I think I can improve them. But after that, I'm just going to be learning how to make fucking models in Blender and animate them. And then I'll be importing them into Godot, and that'll be a whole thing in itself. So code-wise, this is almost basically done. the game is, as I said at the beginning, not meant to be like a big game. It's just sort of like a place I can put OCs and give them things to say when you talk to them, and it's going to be really cute. It's Plimpy. Plimpy, my D&D fairy. She's so crazy. And there's Gun Girl over here. She's so mean. So yeah, and look at that. Look at that lovely blue sky. Oh, I love it here. Oh, what a place. This is exactly what I wanted. It's just like a nice little place I can hang out, chill with my OCs, and, you know, interact with them. I might, like, add bunches and bunches of text. It won't just be, like, one thing you can say to them and then they repeat. Maybe you can ask them questions. In Dark Cloud, you can ask them questions based on, like, where should you, because you can, you know, do stuff with their house. You'd be like, where do you want your house to be? What do you want? What do you need? I'm saving the world. I'm rebuilding your town. What do you want? And they'll say stuff. And then they just have generic things to say. Oh, that was Redman again. Redman does not have a JSON. Let me just look at the JSON again. So this is Gun Girl. So she says those two things. She'll cycle through these. Every other JSON looks the same. And yeah. That's the code. That's the whole fucking thing. Thanks for listening, or well, probably watching. You should have been watching. There's a lot of visual stuff. Alright. I think I get it. I think largely I understand what is happening. I will need, if I were to like do it all again, I would not remember most of it, but now that I have it here, I can be like, how did it work in that one game? Then I look at my old code and be like, yeah, I know how it fucking worked. I get it. I'm learning. Alright, see ya.